Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Digital Photo Mentor live stream. And today we are going to be talking about sunsets. And Karen likes the image because I believe it is her photo. So this is one that we're going to be taking a look at today. So every week we come live at this time and we talk about how to edit a particular theme or style of photos. Today we're going to be looking at sunsets because there are a few things about sunsets that you want to know in order to make them look better when you're processing and also when you're photographing them. So we're going to talk about both aspects of the photography end and the photo editing end. You'll see some examples done with both Lightroom and Luminar based on which program the original photographer was using. So let's just see who's here. We've already got Karen, Debbie, Marty. I have some of your images as well. Marty from Wisconsin, Mickey, Julia, David. I have one of yours that you submitted a long time ago, David. So we'll see where I get to with how many I get to today. Okay. Marguerite from Sault Ste. Marie. No sunsets, just a week of heavy clouds and whiteouts. Ooh, whiteouts. We could actually use more snow here because the farmers are already saying that we need more snow because it's going to be a dry spring if we don't get more snow. So I'm going to actually jump right in, and Rob can switch my layout around now. So we've got that figured out. Before I do that, though, I actually want to talk about something else. And that is somebody who sent me an email question about using a tablet, like a graphics tablet, with your photo editing software, especially specifically with Luminar Neo. And in the process of testing it for him, what I learned was that my old Wacom tablet would not work with my current Mac operating system, and there was no driver update for it. So what I ended up doing was buying a new one, and I bought a different brand, a third party brand, if you will, a lesser known brand, right? Wacom is sort of the industry standard. It's the one that a lot of the pros use. You may have heard it pronounced Wacom. It's actually Wacom. And what I did was I got this one. Okay, so this one, right? I get to do my best. It's all fingerprinted up here. So I get to do my best Vanna. And as you could see, the brand on this one, where is it here? There it is. Okay, is right there. Okay, so that's HUION. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but Rob's going to put a link to this one. It cost me literally $50 Canadian, so like $35 American. You can see how big it is. It's about 10 inches, so it's a 10 by 6, and it comes with the pen, which is pressure sensitive. Okay, and I'm left-handed, and I was able to invert it so the buttons are on the right for me, so that when you're doing your editing, especially when you're drawing a mask, you can do it on here, okay, with like a pen, as opposed to trying to do it with a mouse. So it's much easier. And if you're doing a lot of that kind of thing, your hand won't get cramped up, because I find that with a mouse you end up with hand cramps. So 35 bucks US, 50 bucks Canadian, and you're set to go. So I'm going to be using that more in my editing. I'm not going to use it today because I have too many other things plugged in, and I literally don't have a plug-in to put it in right now because I've got streaming stuff going on. So I don't have a free plug-in. Nick says he uses one as well. Awesome. Yeah, I found that I was easy to set up and easy to invert to the left-handed programmability, and all the buttons you can set to whatever shortcut you want. And you can set them to different shortcuts for different software. So that's really cool too. So just thought I would mention that before I get started, because that was a question that had come in. Okay, so let me get out of mode here and get into my sunset folder. Okay, I'm going to start in Lightroom because I've got them all sort of set up here. And these are the images that we're going to talk about today. And each one or set of images, there's a lesson I want to give you from each one. So the first thing I want to talk about is exposure. And from what I'm seeing here, everybody's done a great job exposing their sunsets, because if you get a sunset that is super underexposed, it'll be really sort of faded out and flat looking. And I didn't see any of those. So let me just turn some of these back on here. Let me see. Oh, I need to go to the folder to do that. So the ones that let me see what an underexposed or overexposed sunset looks like. I'm not seeing any really poor exposures here. These all look pretty good. This one might, could have been a little bit less exposure, but we still got the subject silhouetted. So that is usually the goal with a sunset. And that's what I wanted to talk about first is how do you expose to get a sunset color? So there's an article that I did on the website a while ago, about a long time ago, about exposing for sunset or taking better sunset. So can you please share that article, Rob, the link to how to do better sunsets, 3 tips. And one of them is exposure. One of them is white balance or color. And we can adjust that in processing when we've got the raw files as well. And the other is put something interesting in front of your sunset, right? Which a lot of you have done here. So you guys are on the right track here. Okay. David mentions about the Wacom tablet. He haven't updated their Pro line, and that the one that I have isn't even a Pro one. It was like the Intuos older, Intuos 4, so it was quite older, quite a bit older. I bought it used as well, but I think I paid a couple $100 for it several years ago. So it's served me well, and I thought I would try this one. So I'm gonna end up doing a review of it. So I think for the value, you can't go wrong, right? You can't beat $50. Yes, Lee. Are you a fellow left-hander? That is true, because you use the opposite side of your mind, right? So if we are left-handed, we are in our right mind. Absolutely. So cheers to all the left-handers out there. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is putting something in front of your sunset, right? So you can see here that we've got some really nice subjects, right? Some people on the beach, some hot air balloons, some neat old trees or half dead trees in the desert, and variations. I love that you're doing variations, Karen. Right. So this one to me looks like sunrise, because I looked at the times they were taken and put them in order based on the first one. So tell me if I'm wrong, but this looks like sunrise. So the sun is coming up and she's taking more photos as it comes up over the horizon. So I love that. Right. Putting some people in front of the sunset. And then we'll talk about things like this, okay, like trees. This is definitely a clear, Monument Valley, nice thing in front of the foreground, right? So all of these things have subject in the foreground, and then we'll talk about this type of situation where you can't really tell what it is, right? So again, another clear subject. So if I go back to the beginning ones here, these few don't have something in front of the sunset. Like if there was a boat here on the horizon, that would be lovely. Here, the horizon is sort of all black. And I've zeroed out your images, Karen, because they came with some edits already. So I've got your edits too. And this one. So these are not without merit, though, because with the software that we're using, whether it be Lightroom and Photoshop or Luminar, you have the ability to change the sky. So you also have the ability to photograph your own skies and make your own sky replacements. So these 3 is what I would do with these 3 images. That's what I would do with these, right? So I'm going to start with David's here just really quick, and how I would edit this for being a sky replacement. So you want one that has a nice low ISO and it's not so grainy. Okay, so this one, 250 ISO. One thing you want to make note of here, David, is you don't need to use F10 on a sunset like this, because you're literally, I don't know what my mouse is doing. You're literally just photographing infinity. So you could photograph this at f1.2 and still get the horizon in focus, because that's all you need is infinity in focus, and then get a much faster shutter speed. So you don't need such a small aperture when you're doing this one. So the first thing, it's a Canon RAW file. So I'm going to go into the camera profiles, okay? And I'm going to look for landscape because this one, landscape usually gives me a nicer color. In this case, it's very red. I'm trying to get rid of the red. I want it to be a little bit more orange. So I'm going to go with standard, right? And then I'm going to shift the white balance here, okay? So I'm going to try auto and see what it comes up with. Okay, so auto white balance in the camera and in your photo editing software are both trying to do the same thing. They are trying to neutralize any color that they see, okay? So see how it did neutralize a lot of the red? And that's kind of what I was looking for here, okay? I want the water to be a little bit bluer, but it's gone a little too far. So I'm going to bring it back a little bit. And then we can sort of play with this one here. So if I want more orange as opposed to this pinky color, it's this green and magenta slider, the tint slider. So I want to go a little bit to the left. Okay. Now we have a little bit more orange as opposed to red. Okay. I can still do my shift double click. But before I do any more, I'm going to edit to crop. Okay. So I want to crop this image. Oops. Press the wrong button. I'm using my keyboard shortcut for the wrong software. Okay, so my mouse is all over the place today. Isn't that interesting? Come on, mouse. Okay, so now I'm going to crop to, my mouse has a mind of its own right now. Give me a second here because I'm just going to turn off some things and fix my mouse because my mouse is doing some weird things. Okay, give me a second here. Where's my mouse controller? Somebody tell me where my mouse controller is. There it is. All right, let's try this again. Okay, so I'm going to crop out and I'm going to make sure that I can do off aspect ratio because I want to get rid of the horizon. Okay. I also want to make sure it's straight. So I'm just going to click auto to make sure the horizon is straight. And then I'm literally going to get rid of it. I see that it's not quite straight. Okay, that looks pretty good. Right. There's a little bit of horizon left there, but I think putting this into another image, it would blend okay. It would blend quite well. Okay, so this is going to be the replacement image. Okay, now if I want to have more blues, I can give it a bit more clarity. I might even brighten it a little bit. I find that if you're making skies for replacements, keep them a little bit on the softer side, like less contrast and a little bit brighter without overexposing, because you can always add contrast and darkness once you add it to your new image. Okay, but it's harder to get rid of it if your clouds are too dark, for example. Okay. So let's just see what we got. I want to brighten it a little. And we know that the sun is clipping, but that's okay because it's the sun. All right, so now see, I've brightened it so that we've got some nice detail. And I think this one would be a really nice addition into another image. Okay, you might even want to do some noise reduction on this one just to make sure it's nice and clean. It looks pretty good, but I do see some noise. Right? Can you see that? So I might run this one through the new Lightroom denoise. Okay, so it will make a new DNG, but let's just see how good a job it does. Okay, so it's a very simple tool to use. You literally just click it and then choose the amount. Okay, so it's loading us a preview. It shows the preview at 100%, so we can really see if there's any noise. Okay, 11 minutes. Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm not going to do that. Oh, because I've chosen 2 images. Okay, let me cancel out. Like make sure I have 1 image. Okay, let's try that again. Okay. I'm not going to wait 11 minutes. I'm not even going to wait 6 minutes. My computer seems to be taking its time on this one. Okay, so there you go. So if we choose it at 74 slider, look at how nice and clean it is. Okay. If I want to just do it a little bit less, we get a little bit of noise. Okay, so it's giving a preview. All right, I'm going to click enhance, and then it says it's going to take 6 minutes, but let's see how long it actually takes. Somebody make note of what time it is. Okay, so it's 2:15. Let's just see if it actually takes 6 minutes. Okay, so it's going to make a new DNG, which is a digital negative, right? Then you have to from there save it out as a JPEG in order to use that as a sky replacement. Okay, so that's what I would do with this one. And with this one, okay, so this one is Karen's and this one is Karen's. So these are really great examples of what you could do with a sky replacement, because this one here, there's not a lot going on in the foreground. I would straighten it as well. Yeah, my computer is slow today. I should have rebooted. Let me get out of a few things here. I'm just closing a few tabs on my browser. See if that helps. Okay, so this one here, right? Karen had done some editing on this one already. We're in hurry up and wait today mode, apparently, because my computer is not liking what I'm doing. So she did some editing on this one to straighten it. An unknown error. Okay, well, I don't know what's happened there, and I don't know what's happened here either. That's interesting. Okay, there we go. So this was Karen's edit. So you can see there's sort of like a landscape here and some trees, but it's not really, to me, there's two different pictures going on here, and there's nothing to grab the eye. The eye is going to the sky. So for me, this is also one that I would probably crop into just doing a sky. Okay. You can make it really panoramic as long as you get the majority of the sky, because when you put it into another image, it's probably going to be panoramic there as well, right? I missed a little bit of the land down the bottom, but you can use the Lightroom tools or Photoshop tools or Luminar Neo Erase to get rid of any bits of land that you have left, right? And now here's the neat part about this. You can actually make multiple versions of this sky now, okay, that you can use in other images. This one is quite red. I have no idea why it's doing that. Oh my goodness. I might have to restart Lightroom because this is this is a Lightroom problem. You know what? I updated Lightroom the other day, and isn't that interesting? I'm just going to restart it because I updated Lightroom and Photoshop the other day, and it's doing something very bizarre. Let me see if there's any questions while it's restarting. Let's see. Karen says she thinks it was sunrise, not sure. Took 7,000 photos. It said it was like 4 a.m. or something, Karen, and each one was a later time, so that's why I took that into account. Clouds are amazing, absolutely. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, you could have had your camera set to the wrong time. If you're using Lightroom, you can actually fix that. There's a way to fix that. I might do a video on that because that's something that's come up. About having an S or not in the sunset. There you go. Okay. 32. I'm not sure what you mean, Kelly. Found the amount at 32. Oh, to do the denoise? Okay. Marguerite says, if the noisy image isn't a sky, would you recommend setting the noise reduction value up to 74? I would zoom in and take a look at how much it's reducing and if it's removing too much detail. Play with, the slider a little bit, but literally that's the only thing you have to do is the amount. Okay. So I would just try it. And if it's removing too much detail, bring it back down. But so far I've had good luck with the Lightroom denoise that it doesn't remove detail. It keeps a lot of detail. Absolutely, Karen. Like go through your catalog and find all the skies that don't have anything in front. And if this got nice clouds like that, make your own sky replacement catalog. Absolutely. It is, Lee, and I'm a little bit scared. It is taking over. Okay, let me try Lightroom again. Let me launch Lightroom again. Okay, you were talking about the denoise thing. All right, let's see if I can get a better job here. I would take another coffee too, Rob. While he's making coffee. Yeah, my mouse just slows right down as soon as Lightroom opens. Definitely Lightroom is doing something. So maybe don't update to the new Lightroom just yet. Okay, so I updated and now I'm kind of regretting that I did. Seems to be lagging. Okay, so back in here. So now we have a few options, right? So we've got all these edits and things. I don't know if we need to adjust this quite as much. I would probably keep it a little more dramatic. Okay, like so. And I generally never use these. You guys know that. Okay, so if you want more vibrance, add more black. And now we can create what's called a snapshot in Lightroom. So you can create different versions. Okay, so a snapshot is kind of like a virtual copy, but without having all the extra thumbnails. Okay, so I can just save this as yellow orange. Okay, so I know that this color of this one is that. Oh my goodness. Wow, it's really slow. It's really slow today. I might be using all Luminar. Oh, why did it not create my snapshot? So then, assuming that it's going to create me a snapshot at some point, there it is. Okay. Now I can change the color. So if I want the sky to be more blue, pink, okay, so it's totally different. And now look, we've actually got some of these rays showing up, which didn't a minute ago. So now I can save a new snapshot called blue pink. So just switching back and forth like this, you can export them in different colors. Okay. We could even add a color. We can play with the color mixer and do some shifting and so on. So make different variations and export them all. You might be able to get 4 different sky replacements from this one sky. Okay. So there's another tip for you. So I would do that same thing with this other one, Karen. This guy here. I would do that with this guy here as well, right? So crop to the top of the trees. You'll lose this thing down here. You'll lose the sun rays, right? But if you're using Luminar to put the sky in, you can add the sun rays back in using the sun rays tool. So I wouldn't worry about it. I do have my Lightroom course, Karen, because I do cover snapshots in the course, right? So snapshots, it just doesn't clutter up your thumbnails as much. If you want 6 versions of this one, you don't end up with 6 thumbnails, right? So you can switch back and forth. I'll do snapshots for different croppings as well. So if I want to crop one to fit 8 by 10, I'll save that as a snapshot, crop to 8 by 10, for example. Okay, so now let's look at the next category of things, which is images which have something in the foreground, right? When you have something in the foreground, then your next decision is, do I leave it as a silhouette or do I brighten it? Okay, so I'm going to look at a few where this one I would probably do as a sky replacement as well, just to finish this one up, because I looked at this image and I looked at what's in the foreground and it's not as interesting or something that I want to showcase. Because if we look at the foreground here, let's see, there's a picnic table with like a hibachi. Okay, so that doesn't really add to the scene. So this one I would probably also just crop to the sky and do a sky replacement. Okay, so cropping to about there, like so. And I got a little bit of the land there, so we need to come a little farther and then make that into a sky. Now you can see, you can use that to your advantage and make some different colors as well. Okay. So things that are in front of the sunset, right? So Karen's got a few more, right? So we've got some paddle boarders and somebody taking their photo. That's the one I used on the featured image. We've got some hot air balloons in various different positions. And then we've got the sun rising, the kids. And then I've got these two of Marty's. Okay. So this one for me, Marty, is a very recognizable type of subject, right? So this one would make a great silhouette with a little bit of detail maybe in the foreground. Okay. This one, not so much. It's trees, but are they interesting enough to be the subject, right? Yes, they're a recognizable subject, but is it interesting enough, right? So that's the question you want to ask. So when you encounter a nice sunset, think about what you're putting in front of it that might make, a nice iconic silhouette. If there's nothing there that you can use, just photograph the sunset and think about it as a sky replacement. So that's probably what I would have done here, but it's going to be really difficult to get rid of all of this foreground, all of these trees and stuff, because there's not really anything there to grab the person's interest. So if we bring detail into the foreground, it's not adding anything, right? And this one, there's a couple more down here that I'm going to do on Luminar, right? So when we're talking about when you want foreground detail, something more like these, I would put a little bit of foreground detail here, but not much. I like the fact that there's a person here. If Dawn is watching this, and he's just right on the bottom of the frame, I would have liked to have a little more space around this person or below him, but it gives you an idea of scale of those rocks, right? So perspective by adding a person in there. He's like the little ant, little tiny ant, right? I like it better than this one because, yeah, there's no person in this one. So you don't get that sense of scale, right? And then this one is a JPEG that Tim sent, and I believe this is his edited version, okay, of this one. And this is another situation where he's used f14, so super low ISO, okay. I would have given this one a little more exposure, or this is the type of situation where if you want foreground detail, bracket, okay, bracket. Rob, are you back at your office yet? If he's not, when he comes back, I'll get him to share an article on HDR processing and when to do HDR and when not to, right? So if you want to have detail in both the sunset and the foreground, you want to do HDR. Oops. It helps if I search for HDR, not hydro on my website. I search for HDR. Okay, here, I've got the article here for you guys. Here we go. We also have a course on HDR as well. So if you want to do that type of thing, we have a course on it. Okay? I will share that as well. And some of you, I think, have already done that one. It was actually a webinar that I did, and I talk about how to both photograph and process HDR. Although I would be using Luminar Neo now and not Aurora, which I did at the time. So let's look at a couple of different ones. Okay. I want to take a look at one of Karen's and maybe this one of Marty's. Okay. So of these three, I kind of like the first one because I looked at all three and I found that the full orb was a little too bright. It took up too much of the scene. And I like the positioning of the trees better with less foreground. So I kind of like the first one. I chose the first one as my favorite, and I would process this one very different than the ones where I want foreground detail. Okay, so this one I'm going to leave the silhouette. We're going to do the same thing though. We're going to start with camera profile. Okay, let me make sure she hasn't done any edits here. Okay, it looks like a slight edit. Okay, so I'm just going to choose camera profile. So landscape definitely gives us a nice color, but standard is a little bit more orange than red. So it depends on what you want. Okay, we could go right to vivid, gives a lot of contrast. Do you want more orange or do you want more red? Okay, in this case, I kind of like the red. It's like the sky's on fire. So I'm going to go with landscape, and I'm going to do I could do shift double click, but that's what I anticipated happening. Because when you do shift double click and you have the sun or a light source, it's going to try and dial it down. So I'm going to use the Alt Option key instead and actually go the other way and let the sun clip a little bit. So it's overly bright, but that's okay. It's a light source. Okay. Now let's do the same on the blacks. And it didn't go anywhere. Right. So I'm just enhancing that contrast a little bit more, which what do we know about contrast? Gives us more color, right? Okay, so let's do straighten. There we go. So I did auto. The other thing I find here is that there's a little bit too much foreground for me, and they're a little bit centered. So I'm going to go back to the cropping, and I'm just going to come in a little bit more. So these trees are a little bit more off center, right? Like so. And other than that, there's not much more that I would do. I would come in and check on chromatic aberration. So that's under lens corrections, right? And then if there's any sort of glow around the outside, and Luminar has that, I'm trying to think of the word of it, fringe, defringe, okay? And there is a defringe here as well, okay? So if we see a fringe on the outside, usually it's going to be like purple. You're going to get a red fringe around the trees here because it's glowing around them. So that's natural, okay? But I'm looking for something that doesn't look natural. Let's see about adjusting the color. Do we add more red, right? We could go crazy with red. Now, keep in mind that even though it's red and yellow, remember when you adjust this slider tint and go more towards green, you get more orange as opposed to red, right? I do like the orange, right? You could also go in and apply some color grading, right? If you want more color in the sky, you can add some color into the highlights. Okay, so if we want more yellow in the highlights, like so, okay? So you could really get wild. Now there's kind of a green tint in the middle here. I don't know if I can correct it with some magenta, but we can go to the magenta side and then just see about midtones. Yeah, it's picking up too much of the sky. That might actually be shadows. Let's try shadows. Okay, so magenta, I'm on the shadows. See that? Just, I'm looking at this band right here in the middle. So it's green, and I want to get rid of that green. There it is. Okay. I might need to counter on the other side with a bit more yellow. So that's that balance again. So I'm countering out. See that? I'm just balancing out that the colors blend together. On this one, I would be very careful of adding an edge vignette, because when you do an edge vignette, right, remember it's going to be round-ish of some kind, right? So we can do something like this, right? But you have to be really careful not to get these sort of cut off corners, right? So if we go with color priority, a little softer, but you're still getting the corners darker than the edges. So if you want to darken, what I would do instead, excuse me, is simply a linear gradient coming down from the top, right? And I would just darken a little bit from the top, like that, right? As opposed to the round. Okay, so in this case, I would use a radial gradient instead of the vignette. Right, so that's the same procedure that I would use on all of these ones here that I want it to be a silhouette. Okay, so we could then copy these adjustments. I should have done that in the develop module, but I can do it here. Okay, so you can copy your develop settings here. Okay, so copy. And I do not want to copy the crop because each image is going to be different. And I'm not going to copy the masking per se. So I'm just going to copy all of the other effects. Okay. Now, if I want to apply it on this one, okay, you can apply your develop settings here. Did you know that, right? By doing a right click. Okay. So I'm just pasting that in, and it's obviously too green. So I'd have to do some color adjusting, but right out of the gate, it gives me that much stronger contrast that I'm looking for. And we just have to go and adjust the color. Okay. Oh my goodness, Lightroom is extremely slow today. So I'm just going to change that back to as shot. And I'm going to undo the color grading. There we go. Okay. So let's make this one a little warmer. Something like that. Okay. And I chose this one out of the balloons because I really like this sort of, um, you know, ethereal God rays, if we will, coming out of the sun. And in this case, I will dial this down a little bit because it's too bright in the clouds. So we're not seeing the actual sun here. So in this case, I do want to make sure that I have a little more detail in these clouds here. Okay. And you'll notice that the more I bring the highlights down, the more those rays show up as well. Okay. It still feels really gray to me, doesn't it? Like this whole area feels gray. Okay. So we could do an adjustment on the top part of the sky. Okay. Again, I could use a radial gradient or linear gradient, sorry, and just bring it down over the part that I think is gray, right? And this is where I would use this color tool as opposed to the temperatures, is I just want to add some orange. So I'm going to go crazy with the orange, or I could go the opposite and say, well, I want the top of the sky to be a little more blue, right? So it stands out those rays, just so that it's not gray, right? Something like that. How's that? Right? Can you see that? I'm not worried about the balloon because it's black anyways. Okay. So you pick your colors. And that looks like actually a really nice sort of teal and orange. You could even apply a LUT that makes teal and orange. And once again, if you want to try this on another image, we can just copy and go to the next one and paste. And voila. So that one is definitely better. And then we could do the same on this one. So when you have a series like that that is really similar, you should be able to just sync them or copy and paste and get the same kind of settings, right? You could even, I haven't tried this, but you could even try this, Karen. Take one of these balloon images, crop out the land, and do a sky replacement with the balloon. It would have to go into the right image to make sure that the scale works correctly, right? Because if you put it into something that um, the perspective of the balloon size was off, it would look weird. But give that a try. Give that a try and let me know how that goes, because I've never tried a sky replacement with something in the sky. Okay. So let's try that. Thank you for that, Rob. Okay, so there you go. Balloon photos were definitely sunrise. Yeah, I think they are. They usually happen at sunrise. Okay, so I want to do a couple in Luminar here, and I'm going to bring these ones of and Tim and Dawn and maybe Marty's as well, right? Because I want to have a little bit of detail. Actually, Marty's here. Which one would you prefer yours done in, Marty? I am going to go to Luminar and I'm going to work on these. Okay, so this one I believe is the JPEG. So yes, I think so. Let's take this one into RAW. I'll know when I get there. No, that one is not RAW. Okay, let's try this one. That one's the raw file. Okay. Can you see how I could tell which is the raw? Because it says develop raw here and the other one didn't. Okay. So it was a slightly edited JPEG. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is go into develop raw. Let's pick a camera profile and see if any of these are better. Look at the detail right there. Camera standard HDR. That's interesting. I've never even seen that. Right. So it's already picking up some of the detail in the foreground for us. Camera flat, HDR. I'm going to see the difference of these. So if I want to compare the flat HDR to the standard, I'm going to choose flat. And then when I come back here, I can just hover over. It's not much difference other than a little more color with this one. Right. So I'm going to start there, actually. Let's just see what landscape. Landscape adds contrast, so we don't want that. Okay, now we know we need some more exposure and we can work on the curve, right? You learned about curves last week. I can turn on the clipping warnings, Okay, so the sun is clipping. Again, we're not worried about that. We can bring the highlights down a bit. And we're probably going to need to bring the shadows up quite a bit. Now look at all the detail in there. Okay, so if you had bracketed this, you would have detail for days in this area. Now this thing here sticking up kind of bothers me a little bit, but let's see if we can work with it. I may not do a full, kind of HDR here because you start to get, can you see the halo happening around the tree? I'm not sure if you're seeing it. There's a light bit in here and then it goes darker here and there's a halo around the land. So that happens when you try and take things too far. And I can see that by pulling the shadows way up here, that's happening. Okay. So I'm just going to bring them up a little bit and the highlights down. So we keep that nice color. Let's bring the overall exposure up a little bit. Right. And let's play with the color a little bit. So down here, I could warm it up a little bit more. And let's just take out some of the magenta. When I do my sunsets, I like the sun and this part to be yellow, and I still like to have some blue up here, right? So I'm trying to find this balance of color between both, right? See that? See now the sky is yellow versus having a little bit of blue in there, right? And I can shift that a little bit more, right? This is where we can find that defringe, chromatic aberration. And if we had any chromatic aberration, it's going to show, aha. So can you see that? There's a blue outline here and a definite yellow outline here. Okay, so if I turn them both off, that's interesting. They weren't there before I did chromatic aberration. Okay, so I'm going to leave that off and defringe. It looks okay. Okay, so adding the chromatic aberration checkbox seemed to add it, which is bizarre. All right, so that's about all I want to do in raw. Maybe give it a tiny bit of sharpness. Make sure the masking is high. Remember, it keeps that off the sky. Okay, and then I'm going to do a crop. So I wanted to see what Luminar thinks is a good crop on this one. So I'm just going to do composition AI. Okay, as usual. Okay, it's cropped in, but I disagree with where it's positioned it. I want to keep a lot of this foreground. And I want to get rid of some of these little open areas over here and a little bit less of the top part because I'm going to erase this thing. Oops. I like this one over here and I like the tree over here to balance. They work to balance, but this thing right down the middle is bugging the heck out of me. So we could use Gen Erase or Erase to see about getting rid of that. Let's try Enhance AI. Okay, so Enhance AI does some really great things often in the foreground, but you get way lots of these halos. Okay, so be really careful of doing stuff like this. If Holly was here, she's going to say this is neon puke, and I'm going to say she's right. Right. So what's happening here is you start to get these dark outlines on the edge of things and light outlines are on the other side, and it's very unnatural looking. Okay, so use these sliders very sparingly, right? Like so, and not go too far, right? So we're just showing just a hint of the landscape, right? Like the sun is just kissing the landscape, and that's okay. We don't need full detail, right? I am going to do a vignette on here because there's like a house or something over here in the background that really isn't adding to the story at all. And of course we cropped, so we need to reposition this. So I'm just going to make it smaller and reposition it about like that. So I'm just minimizing these edges. Okay. Now the other tool that I like a lot is down under the professional section, and that's color harmony. I'm actually going to talk about that because it's Luminar Neo's 2nd anniversary right now. And we have a special discount code for the anniversary. So I believe, Rob, can you please find that discount code for the anniversary? I think it's in an email that we received, but we'll make sure that it's in the description area below if we can't find it in the chat. But if you need to buy Luminar Neo, it is on super sale right now for their second anniversary. But also, I had an idea of making a video about my 3 favorite tools. So for those of you that are here, you could probably make some guesses as to what are my favorite tools. This is one of them. Okay. So under color harmony, the color contrast slider, I love this one because it allows me to do opposite things to opposite colors on the scale. Okay. So if you're talking about, like in this case, yellow and blue, for example, okay, if we put the slider on blue, okay, we're darkening the blue. Oh, we're brightening the blue, sorry, and darkening yellow. If we go the opposite way, we're brightening yellow and darkening blue. Okay, so they're opposite colors, and you get to decide which way you want to accent more. So if we want more of the sun, we can go on yellow or orange. Okay, maybe I want to brighten the green a little bit. Okay, so we can brighten the green this way as well. See, that's actually doing a nice job on the foreground. The split color warmth here, we can actually shift the sky. So if I want more blue in things that are already somewhat blue, right? I was playing with this color of the sky. This one works great. Same thing here. If I want the orange to be more orange or the sky to be more orange, we have that ability here. Okay, so see what that's doing? It's doing a really good job. Okay. I'll dial that back just a little bit. Right? We can also shift some of the colors, right? So if I want the highlights, again, to be more yellow, right? Give them a little bit of yellow. A little bit less red. And I find that the shadows, maybe they need to be warmer as well. Oh, interesting. When we go blue, it gets darker. That's interesting. Oh, because of our other effect up here. Let's see. Let's go a little more green. There we go. So this tool does a lot of really great things, I think. Okay. All right, let's see how we can do with this erase tool. So I'm going to zoom in here, and I'm going to get a big brush, and I'm just going to start with the top part. Okay, so I'm just going to do section by section, because when you're erasing something big like this, try and do it in pieces. If you just make one big giant swash and you're zoomed out, it's going to make a mess. So this is one tip for using the erase tool, is little by little. Okay, you can see that it's taking a little bit of time to work on that. And there it is. It's a little, you can see it a little bit on the edges there, but that's easy to clean up, right? Now the second one's going to go faster, I bet you. Boom. Okay. So now I just keep going and do a piece by piece. Okay, when I get down here, I got to be careful because now I need it to generate a cloud, right? So, oh, look, it already did generate something there. So I'm just going to make a little smaller brush. Let's see how it does. That's pretty good, right? Is it perfect? No, but it looks pretty good. So now I'm just going to go over it like that. Look at that. That looks pretty good. Pretty believable to me. So small pieces. Also believable. Okay, so try not, just don't go crazy and go one big swoosh, right? And now it blends. See that? So that big thing in the middle is now gone, right? You can also use the erase tool to do things like this, okay? Because I find this little spot right here to be really distracting and bright, right? So we can literally just use the erase tool to get rid of it. Now I'm seeing a lot of noise in here, okay, because we cranked up the shadows. So we might do some denoise in here, but I just wanted to show you what we can do with that erase tool. Okay, so here's our before and after. Big difference, right? This is a really cool image, right? Now you can see the sky is not perfect, but we can easily, fix it with the clone tool. So I'm just going to zoom in to 50%, right? You can see the unevenness right here. So I'm just going to select a spot from here. I've got a fairly large brush and go with strength at 30%. And I'm just going to go over the edge. See that? So I'm just kind of pushing it in, right? Pushing from here. Then I'm going to go from this side and do the same thing. Right? It's just that smooth blue area that needs to be evened out a little bit. Right? Just like that. So I go from one side and then go from the other side. And there's a little bit right here that's not perfect either. So I'm just going to do a little swash there. Right? If I zoom out, see the before and after. Now it just cleans up that area nicely. So clone at a lower percentage cleans up what the erase tool didn't quite get perfect. Right? Now, I might finish this one with a couple of other things that are my favorites, which another one I use quite a bit on a lot of images actually is a lot. And there's some really nice, well, we could do teal and orange. Let's see what that looks like. Some of these are fairly strong, right? We could do some cinematic toning, right? These kind of look neat. Ooh, that's neat. So it's what is enhancing the color that's already there, right? See that? Or we get a little creative with a matte look, right? I know that Auckland is really yellow. Do we like Tokyo? Right, so Tokyo kind of enhances the color. And then maybe I'll just dial it back a little bit. Okay. And my final one would be Mystical, just to give it a little bit of that sort of glow, magic glow. Just subtle. And there's finished. Right? So in this one, I'm bringing out some of the foreground detail, just enough to say, this is obviously in a desert or a cactusy area, okay? But not full, okay? So I don't want to go overboard because we haven't bracketed and there isn't more latitude to pull up the detail without getting those halos and artifacts. So really watch it and just keep it more subtle if you only have a single image. The other thing we could do, okay, and I'm actually going to try this with, I could try this with a JPEG actually. No, I want to try this with the raw file. Let me duplicate this file. So just give me a second here. Luminar does not have the ability to do a virtual copy. So unfortunately, I have to duplicate the original. So I'm just going to copy it and paste it. And it should show up here in this same folder. I have to make sure that I can see everything. Okay, so there it is. I believe that is the raw file. Let's just find out. Yes, okay, so this is the raw file. This is the JPEG. Okay, so let's take this raw file and dump it into HDR merge, okay? Let's check the settings. I'm going to leave chromatic aberration off because it didn't do such a good job, but let's just see what comes out. Okay, so now I'm just doing a single image HDR merge, okay? And so it's going to spit out a new image that it's tried to pull some detail from, and it will put it in the folder called HDR images. Okay, HDR merge. So you can see it did pull a little bit of detail out of here, but we still need to go and do, a bunch of shadows and so on. I still think from the raw file, we got a better result, but it did pull down that exposure on the sun. It's actually not so bad, right? So you could, if you have a really contrasty image, you can start with pulling it directly into HDR merge as well and see what you pull out. Okay. Let's go back to sunsets. Okay, so Marty said, I think he said either for his, right? Let me go back here. Marty says use either. There is the link. Yeah, make sure that's the right link, Rob, because the one that Yasia gave us just for us expired on the 14th, so not that one. The pink one was interesting. Which one was that, Kelly? The pinky one or one of the LUTs? The greenish, purplish, reddish blue. Okay. And Rob says that is the proper link. Okay, cool. Awesome. All right, so let's do Marty's and Luminar as well, because Luminar seems to be behaving better for us today than Lightroom does. Okay, so there's Marty's. So I want you all to go and tell all your Adobe friends or your friends that say Luminar is not stable. Look what happened today. New Lightroom update in the toilet, right? A new Lightroom update in the toilet, right? I can't get Lightroom to work today, but Luminar is working just fine, right? So it's not just Luminar. What are you using for editing, Mike? So T54H, is that you, Mike? And any questions about the erase tool, right? Did you see how I did that erasing? Any questions about that? And tell me what you're using for editing. Actually, all of you, tell me what you're using for editing primarily. Just put it in the chat. So I'm going to do something similar here. Right now, could I copy and paste from the other one? Let's find out. Because we did, let me just favorite this one so I can show less images. Here we go. All right, let's start with this one and see if I can copy. And let's see what happens if I paste. So it's going to do a weird, obviously, yeah, weird color. But let's see how bad it is. Okay, so this was a copy and paste. A little over the top. But let's go back to develop raw, right? And we've gone too far with this one, okay, in terms of exposure and so on. Okay, let's just work on this. I'm going to increase the whites. And something's gone wrong with the color here. So we'll just do back to the original color. No, I'm not liking what's happening. So we'll just start over. Okay, so copy and paste in this case did not work. It was more work to fix it than to start from scratch. Sometimes you can get a good copy and paste. Sometimes not so much. It's possible that I tried to use a camera profile that doesn't exist for this camera as well. Okay, so camera portrait, look at that. Gives us more red, okay? Vivid always adds contrast, so I tend to avoid that one. So look at this one. Portrait gives me just a hint of detail in this foreground. I don't know if you guys can even see it, right? If I bring up the shadows a little bit, you can see what's there, right? Also, you can see a spot on Marty's sensor, but we'll fix that. Okay, so I'm going to look at curves, turn on the clipping warning. So I'm just going to bring it in. There's a tiny bit of clipping right there. So I'm going to stop. And let's bring that in a little bit. Okay, see how it just a tiny bit goes extreme real fast. Okay. I feel like the image is leaning a little bit, so I am going to do a crop, but I'm still not sure about this color balance yet. Let's check chromatic aberration. Okay, do you see that red outline there? Okay, so that could be a chromatic aberration. Yep, it's gone. Okay, let me do it again. There's a little red outline here. You see it? Red on this side and ever so slight blue on that side. Chromatic aberration mostly solves that. Okay. You can work on distortion correction. I'm debating about this rock formation over here because it's kind of just on the edge of the frame. I would have either included the whole thing or cropped it out. So I may end up cropping it out just because it's not fully there. Okay. And let's do a little bit of sharpen with a little bit of masking again. And how's our noise reduction? I don't see a lot of noise, so that looks pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to start there. Okay, now see how I'm just bringing up a little bit of detail in the foreground, so it's mostly a silhouette. We can look at Enhance AI again, but this is one that I literally don't use that much because it goes too far. Okay, Sky Enhancer. In this case, it's not too bad. Okay, so again, keep these low. Keep it low, keep it subtle. Okay. I want to check the cropping. So how can we tell if something like this is straight? Well, I'll try the automatic horizon alignment, but what I'm looking at is these lines here probably are straight, right? And they don't look straight. I feel like that looks straighter. Right, and now you see it's kind of automatically cropped that out. So I'm actually going to go a little more free form. Right, I want a little bit of foreground, but as I've mentioned in previous videos, if you've watched, is when you have a lot of foreground, it just feels like the subject is really far away, right? And here we have a third of the image is foreground. So, and this part here, this sort of arch, doesn't really match with the rest of the foreground. So I'm going to come in just to get rid of that part like that. So a little bit more of a panoramic image. So we're straightened. We're straightened. I'm waiting for it. There we go. We're straightened and we've got a little bit of foreground detail. Okay, now can you see this over here? I don't know if that is a cloud. I think that's a hair on your sensor, Marty. So that's going to be an erase thing. I could try automatic dust spot removal, but I don't know if it's going to pick that up. We'll see. It may not. No, it didn't. So I'm going to need to erase it. So same thing. I'm just going to do a little bit at a time. So whether it's a cloud or a dust spot, it just doesn't look good. Okay. So it may very well be a cloud, but I don't like it. So no me gusta. It's out of here. Okay. So sometimes I'll just do a second erase to see if I can get it to blend better. Let's do like that. Okay, so it's not blending. Once again, I'm just going to go down to clone, 30%, and a smaller brush. I'm just going to start here. And all I'm doing is just want it to blend a little better. See that? Like so. Just like that. And maybe even this one. So all you're doing is just softening the edge of whatever is there. Okay. Now I find that the blue has gone a little bit wonky. So I'm going to go up to color. Where are we? Color. And we could try remove color cast, but it just tends to darken things. So I don't necessarily want to do that. I want to shift the blue a little bit. So I'm going to see, do I want a little more purple? Ooh, I like the purple. Look at that. Look what happens when I do that. This clouds get sort of luminescent. So a little bit of purple. That one's not shifting much. Okay, so remember we're changing the hue here. Okay, I can make the orange more orange or more red. Let's go a little bit to the orange side. Right? Like so. Now I can shift the brightness. Come on, luminance. Okay, so blue is the top section of the sky. So let's lighten that, and let's play with the purple a little bit. Giving a little more contrast in the clouds. Can you see that? And it's gone so that it's not quite so, I don't know, in your face blue, I guess. Okay. If I'm still not convinced, I can just dial the blue saturation down a little bit, as well as the red. And once again, we can go down to the color harmony tool because we've got some really nice opposing colors here, right? Do I want to lighten the blue or darken the blue? Okay. Or maybe I don't use this at all. I just want to warm up this part. I do like the sky more purple, actually. I do like the sky more purple. Now shadows, okay, if we want to warm up the land a little bit, okay, so keep in mind that it's also picking up shadows in the clouds. So if I go just a little bit red and yellow, right, so you could shift your colors this way. Okay, so color tool and color harmony. You could add some structure to the sky, but I tend to like to leave the sky a little softer because it'll get more grain. Again, I would probably go to mystical, or another one you can use to add a little bit of a blur effect is glow and Orton effect. On things like this, Orton effect tends to make a glow around the dark objects in the image. It definitely brightens, so you always have to turn it down, okay? But somewhere in the middle, okay? So if you like the idea of having the dark glow, okay, try Orton effect. If you don't like that, then use mystical. It does more of a sort of overall glow. We can also warm it up here. So again, your editing is not super dramatic. It's subtle. That's the before and after. We could probably brighten the whole image just a little bit more, right? So I could go back to the original develop, or I can just do another iteration of develop. Let's just brighten the whole thing a little bit. Like so. It does feel blue. It still feels blue. That's better. Okay. So you want to make sure that your sky blues are not over the top unrealistic. So keep the foreground detail subtle. I use GIMP because I'm cheap. Like it's cheap like me. That's funny. It's cheap. It's free. Lightroom is primary. I often use Neo for color or skies. Cool. I like changing the sky. I start with Lightroom, take my images to Luminar Neo via Photoshop for tasks, then multiple steps in Lightroom. Awesome. 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 Ah, the thing that I erased. Okay. Well, it's out of here. We don't want any contrast. Nick says, when I use curves to eliminate clipping issues, I drag the top right point down to reduce highlights and the bottom left anchor up to eliminate the shadow clippings. Is that the same effect as you do? No, it's not actually. Let me show you what happens if you do that. Okay. If you go to curves, if you go to curves, when you bring this up, you're actually not brightening the shadows. You're changing what number black is. Okay. So black on the 0 to 356 scale of brightness scale is 0. When you bring this up, now you're saying black is 100, for example. So there is no black in the picture anymore. The darkest things in the picture are only that level of gray. Okay. And the same applies with white. Okay. So this is pure white up in the top corner, right? Because if you keep going, I showed this on my curves video. right? You can make white into gray and black into gray and end up with that. Okay, so that's not lowering the highlights and the shadow. That is literally shifting what is white and what is black in the image. Okay, Rob, can you please share the curves video? That might help out with Nick with this one. Okay, so you can literally also invert your image, right? So if you go all the way, black becomes white and white becomes black. It becomes a negative, right? So for those of you who've ever used color film, negative film, that's a negative. That's what your negative would look like. Okay. So no, it's not the same. When I'm going in on the bottom here, I'm tucking in the black so that literally the histogram is moving. So I'm moving where black is applying in the image, right? So this is like levels doing this here if you've done levels, okay? And when you're doing the highlights and the shadows, you're shifting, you're brightening or darkening those areas, okay? But you're not shifting what is the actual black in your image. I hope that helps. But that's a great question. Great question, Nick. Okay. Let's see. What else did I want to cover today? Let me pop back over to Lightroom because I had these categorized. Okay. So Greg had one that was similar and this other one from Marty. So let's do this, Marty. I've got, oops, this one that we did of Karen's, right, is very similar, right? You can see on the thumbnails, they're both sort of an orange sunset, right? So I'm going to do a sync. When you do a sync, it's like a copy and paste. You can choose the settings that you want to sync to the other image. So I don't want, actually, I am going to do the masking because that was that linear gradient from the top. I'm not going to do a crop. So everything else I'm going to apply. Oh, I might not do the camera profile. Okay, so I'll turn off camera profile because if it's shot with a different camera, like hers is a DNG, I don't know what camera, and yours is, I think Nikon, is it, Marty? So I'm going to synchronize without the camera profile because I think that's where we went wrong when I tried to synchronize to the other one or copy and paste. So let's have a look. Okay. Yeah, so camera profiles here, right? This one is, wait for it to come up on the screen. Okay, so Canon. Sorry, you have a Canon and she's got a DNG, but I'm not sure what camera. So I could sync them with the camera profile if they were shot with the same kind of camera. Okay, so hers is Nikon. Okay, so Nikon profile onto a Canon isn't going to work. Okay, so that's why I didn't sync it. But if it's your image and you know you shot it with the same camera or at least the same brand, you can sync the camera profiles as well. Okay, so let's see before and after. So it did basically the same kind of edit, right? So when you have similar images, you can do a copy and paste or a sync. Okay. This one here has kind of gone really yellow at the top. So I might make it go more yellow just to kind of have it blend in a little bit with the orange. Yeah, we've got a contrail here. Cropping on an image like this. Okay, so same thing. Let's take a look at, is it straight? So I'll just do auto. Okay. If auto doesn't work, remember you can use the ruler. So you can grab this ruler and then place your crosshairs, go all the way across on the horizon. So I'm placing this line on the horizon and then it snaps to straight. Okay. I'm going to get rid of some of this foreground because once again, you've got 1/3 foreground, 2/3 sun on sunset. We don't need as much foreground. Let's just focus on that. Right. Now it's really nicely balanced. Actually, this is a really nice image, but this cloud up here kind of bugs me. So I might actually even make it more pano and get rid of that dark cloud at the top. I think that's better. Do you guys agree? Just getting rid of that dark one. Okay. But there's the before and after. So you can totally decide, what kind of image you want this to be. We can actually even make this black and white. Okay. And then color it using color grading, right? So we could go into the shadows, get an orange, right? And it gives you kind of this, you know, sepia look, right? I need definitely more orange. No, it's not giving me the color that I was hoping for. Let's just turn. I do not want auto. Let's turn black and white off. I'm going to change my my thinking there and change it from the color grading, adding some color to just enhancing what's there, right? So if we want a little more orange in the shadows, we can do that. Or if we want blue in the shadows, actually that's kind of neat. Look at that. I kind of like that, actually. It feels like a postcard, doesn't it? A lot might be cool on this one too, right? And while you can't apply a lot in Lightroom, you can do some color funky stuff with the curve tool, which I showed in that video, right? So we can go darker, but darker means more yellow, okay? Up means more, oh, I'm on the wrong curve. Well, that was actually nice. Let's do that. So we're just adding a little bit more contrast. Now let's do that with the blue one. Okay, so down is yellow, up is blue, right? But depending on where we do it. So if I want more yellow in the highlights, but blue in the shadows, we can do that. And then the same with red. Red in the highlights, cyan in the shadows. So now we're getting sort of this cross-processed kind of look, right? Like so. And it's kind of neat. Maybe I'll go this way. No, I like it without. So I kind of like that. See that? See what the shadows are now shifting sort of blue-green, and it gives me like a 70s postcard feel, right? I love it if I would love it if the kids were ever so slightly separated, just so you could see their heads a little bit more, because it looks like a two-headed kid. How did you crop it, Marty? All right, so when I first looked at this image, my first thought was I need to get some of the bottom cropped off. And then once I did that, that top cloud bugged me, right? How did you crop it, Marty? I think we're almost running out of sunsets, but the thing I love about sunsets, let's take this one over to Luminar just for fun. I'm actually going to undo the curves thing here, and I'm going to undo color grading. Okay. I actually liked what I did with the main curve. I'll just do that. Okay, so let's just do that. And then take this one to Luminar and play with LUTs, because I find that it's easier in Luminar to play with a LUT than it is in Photoshop. And you could take it to Photoshop and then to Luminar, but because I'm just applying the one thing, I'm just going to pick the LUT and be done with it. I might add Mystical. And Marty says he did a fairly similar crop. Cool. Thank you, Wendy. Thanks so much. Please give this video a thumbs up. You can do that while you're even watching it, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel, because then you'll see when new videos are posted. But also, if you set notifications, YouTube will give you a notice saying, hey, this person you subscribe to has a new video. Hey, this person is live now. Would you like to go watch that? Right. So just like you get notifications on Facebook, if you subscribe and hit that little bell that says notifications and set it to all, it will let you know about my videos. Okay. Now we could, just look at a preset actually and see what comes up in here too, because it's giving us some creative options, right? Well, that's kind of neat, right? Film, that's kind of what I did. No. And remember though, we can dial these down, right? I'm not going to use Tuscana because I know the Tuscana one changes the sky. But let's say we like that one, but not so strong. You can dial it down. Yeah, see, we're not doing that. We're not doing that one. All right, let's try artistic. A texture might be kind of interesting on this image too, right? Definitely not Neo. No. No, none of these are speaking to me. I'm thinking more artistic. So I think we're just going to go right into go to the LUTs. So right down to mood. Now I usually dial the amount up to about 60 when I'm previewing these because then it gives me a better idea of what I'm looking for and what it's going to look like. So I'm going to look at some of these teal and orange ones because it's a lot of orange already, right? Now let's try cinematic. See, that's closer to what I did with curves, right? So now are you getting an idea of how these LUTs are created, right? So curves is a big part of, ooh, I kind of like, that's kind of dramatic, hey? I kind of like that. Okay, keep San Diego in your mind, right? Keep San Diego in mind. And I'm literally just like, what grabs me? Duotone portrait? No. Let's see, analog. Now, these are some that I downloaded and I got. So there's lots of extra ones here. Land of Freedom. These are the ones I got a while ago from Skylum. I like the San Diego one, I think. There's another one in creative. Let's try creative. Okay. Ushuaia it does that sort of matte black that I was talking about. Ushuaia. That not so much. These are not grabbing me. That one's kind of neat, like a old faded 70s photo again. So I'm kind of leaning towards the same things, right? That's kind of neat as well, right? Matte black for sure. Mulled wine. That was neat. Softer. Okay, so a softer look. That's neat too. Okay, where was the one that I said? Was it San Diego? Was it San Diego? Where was it? Yes. Was this one, right? Am I right? San Diego? Okay, so then I can just decide if I want to crank it or not. There was another one that was kind of a faded out one that was kind of neat. Where was it? Was it in here? Or was it in here? I think it was this one. I think it was this one. Right, so something like that, just a little softer. Okay, so sort of different, right? Different look. You can also apply a second LUT on top, or we could apply a texture here, which you can't do in Lightroom. We could also add the sun rays if we wanted to try sun rays here. Let's just see if this makes sense. Okay, so make sure you put the sun rays on the actual sun. Okay, I want to make sure that they're warm, very warm. Let's keep it minimal. And I love the random thing. I just randomize. I want it to go more up than down. Maybe more arrays. I love just kind of clicking on here. Got to remember to stop when you get one that you like. I don't know. I don't know if it adds to it or not. Something like that. The other option we could try, if I don't do this one, is Magic Light AI, right? So that adds a sunburst, right? So it's not picking up the sun. Oh, yes, it did. See that? Okay, so we can, doesn't give me allow me to do the color. I wish it would change the color here. Okay. So we can make a bigger burst. Let's make them glow a little bit more. Wider beams. So smaller beams, wider beams. I like 12 beams. I don't know why. Seems to be a nice number. See that? It's just adding that, or we could just lower the intensity a bit. How's that? Okay, so there's our before and after. Haven't done a huge shift in Luminar, but something a little bit different, okay? And I'll just save it. You're in San Diego, Nick? Okay, cool. Nice. Great, so now we can just compare the Lightroom version. Where is it? And this new one. Okay, so Lightroom on the bottom, Luminar on the top, and we could do the same thing as I showed you with the curves in Lightroom, right? So sometimes you can replicate or create the look of a lot using the curves, right? So curves is something that people forget about, I think, a lot of times. And it's important to play with curves and just see what it does. Sunsets are a perfect option for doing that. A great idea, a great example of where to do that. Okay, so I'm going to go back to here because I want to remind you all that you don't have to submit any images for next week because we're going to have a special guest. My partner with doing tours is Daniel Korzanowski. He's from Miami, and he's going to be joining me, and we're going to edit our images taken in Morocco, right? So we have a Morocco tour coming up in September, and you can join us if you like, and we'll provide information for you on that next week. But if you want to see some images of Morocco, maybe you've never been to Morocco or an exotic place like that, we have lots of different images. I guess I better pick some, right? So I'm going to edit some images, and Dan's going to edit some images. He'll probably use Lightroom, and I'll use Luminar, and you can come and watch us edit and hear some stories about traveling to Morocco. So that's next week. I'm going to sign out for today and leave you with a last question. Did you learn something today when you on this live about photographing and or editing a sunset? So if you've learned something, tell me in the chat or in the comment area below. If you're watching this replay, tell me what you learned. And if you got value out of this video, please remember to give it a thumbs up and share it. Share away on anything you find on our YouTube channel. Put it on your social media. Send it to your friends. We would be eternally grateful if you shared away till your heart's content. So thanks again for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you. Take care. And until next time, we will see you virtually in Morocco.